So let's talk about gold prices and war. So what I want to do is share with you what exactly happens with gold prices during war, why it happens, and then also share specific examples of wars and show you what happened with the prices for each of those wars. Considering what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, and now we got Israel and Iran going at it, I feel like it's a very good time to start talking about this topic. So first and foremost, obviously it's very common for the prices of gold to go up when wars are going on. And I'll give examples again specifically of this happening in history, but why does this happen? Why does the price of gold go up when wars are going on? Well, first and foremost, wars are expensive, okay? And nowadays, with fiat currency, what happens is that we start printing all of this money to pay for the war. And of course, money printing leads to inflation, which leads to people starting to lose confidence and faith in that currency. I just want to make sure everyone knows the value behind the money that we currently hold. Those dollar bills and all that, or any fiat currency around the world, the whole value behind that is people's faith and confidence in it. So if people start losing faith and confidence in our current money, quote unquote, what happens is it loses its value. The whole value behind it is confidence. Pretty scary. So as people start to watch the value of the currency they hold go down, well, they start realizing that is not so safe, and they want to move into a safe haven asset like gold. Gold comes in as the savior because gold has been a historical safe haven asset for thousands of years. It is battle tested. When empires use precious metals as money, they prosper. And then when they move to a fiat currency because war is starting to happen, they need to fund the wars and all that, well, the system starts to falter, okay? As they use more and more fiat currency, it gets printed more and more, inflation goes through the roof, things fall apart, and then they end up going back to precious metals because they know that is the equalizer. So the first reason that price goes up when wars are happening is because the wars cause inflation, which causes a loss in value of the currency, which has people moving back to gold. But what's interesting is usually the price starts increasing before the effects of inflation from the war are felt. And that has to do with the psychological factor or the psychological side of things. You see, the war creates panic and fear and uncertainty. And that's what starts moving people more into gold. So let's go specifically into what has happened to the prices of gold during specific wars. Now, we'll start with World War II. Okay, this was 1939 to 1945. And during that time, the gold standard was in place, right? Gold was fixed at $35 an ounce. So obviously, during this time, the price of gold didn't do anything. It stayed at $35 an ounce since it was fixed at that rate. So we can't really count World War II. Now, next, we had the Vietnam War. And this was a long war. This is a 20-year war from 1955 to 1975. And of course, during the 50s, the late 50s, and during the 60s, we still had that gold standard in place where gold was still fixed at $35 an ounce. But during the early 70s, in 1971, Nixon abandoned the gold standard. That was ended. And what happened was gold went from that fixed price of $35 an ounce to about $200 an ounce by the end of the Vietnam War. Then by 1980, the price of gold went all the way up to around the $800 range. And of course, a lot of that had to do with some of the effects or the after effects of the long Vietnam War. Now, after that 10-year bull run, which gold went from $35 an ounce to $800, which is a very large run, obviously the market had to cool and gold went on a little bear run, right? It went down for a while and stayed flat for quite a while. We had the short Gulf War, which was from 1990 to 1991. And during this time, gold started at the start of that war was $400 and then went to $430 by the end of the war. Little war, didn't have a ton of effect, sent up gold prices a little bit, but not a great example there. Now, during the Iraq War, which was 2003 to 2011, that's when things really started heating up. So at the beginning of the Iraq War, gold prices were about $350. And then by the end of the Iraq War, which was 2011, gold prices reached $1,400. So that's another very large increase, about 4x. Although definitely some of that increase was because the gold ETF was approved in late 2024. So that definitely had an effect on the price of gold during that time. But the Iraq War definitely racked things up as well. Next, we had the Syrian Civil War, which started in 2011. And of course, at the start of that war, again, we were at that $1,400 price range. And that war is still currently going on. And then we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That was in 2022. And I can't believe it's been 2 years already almost since that war started. But when that started, the price of gold was 1800, and now we see the price of gold all the way up to the 2400 hour range. So the data is there, right? The effects of war definitely have a positive effect on the price of gold. It sends the gold prices up for all those reasons we talked about. And again, of course, that's not the only factor. There's always going to be other factors involved, just like the gold ETF being approved and, current interest rates and everything else going on in the economy. But typically, you're not going to see gold prices go down when there's a war happening, regardless of anything else going on, unless it's like a perfect storm. Typically, those prices are going to go up, especially now, right? I mean, with the amount of debt we've accrued and the interest rates being high and the amount that we're spending on interest in general each year, our federal interest, we have nowhere to go. And these wars are just causing more problems, right? More money, which means more money to pay interest on, which especially nowadays, I think wars are just going to send gold prices even higher and higher because we're in such a bad spot where the debt's so high and the interest is so high on these payments that it's just going to send us in a deeper hole, which is going to send people more towards gold because inflation is getting worse and worse. And I think war is just going to have a compounding effect on the price of gold as we move on.